It's the Free Relief Golf Podcast. Thanks to the Blue Wire Hustle program, this is the place where listeners can explore the hidden cost of elite amateur golf. It'll always cost nothing to get some free relief, so let's get on with it, shall we? Hello and welcome to this, the first episode of the Free Relief Golf Podcast. It's the first episode, I suppose introductions are necessary. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Freddie. I'm from Southend-on-Sea in Essex, England, but I live in St Andrews, Scotland, otherwise known as the home of golf. I've moved up to St Andrews for university. I moved here in 2013 to study a degree in psychology, and I graduated in 2017. And throughout the summers of my degree, when school wasn't happening, I caddied on the old course at St Andrews and the other courses. There's 7 courses on the links, and I caddied on all of them. And over those 4 years of caddying, I learned a fair bit about golf, a lot about people, and a little bit about cash money. But after the 4 years of caddying, and after having graduated my degree, I thought it'd be fun to play golf full time and see how good I can get off my savings that I'd made from the caddying. At the time I was a 4 handicap, and we've been gradually trying to improve on that, which has led to the creation of this podcast, I suppose. The purpose of this podcast, the primary premise, is that where I've been trying to plan my schedules for playing some amateur tournaments in Scotland predominantly, but also across England, it's actually quite tough to project and predict how much all your events are going to cost, all your travel and accommodation expenses. And I suppose the purpose of this podcast is to try and bring all that information into one place, project my year's costs into the same place. So throughout this podcast, I'm looking to, every event I play, I'll be giving updates on how much it's cost me to get there, how much it's going to cost me during my time at the tournament, and add it all up and I suppose relay the information in the hope that it will help other people who are looking to find costs and trying to plan their own amateur golfing schedules. Obviously I've chosen a great time to do this given the COVID situation. And in fact, the first time I sat down and properly planned out a year was in January 2020. I got my wall chart calendar and mapped out meticulously every event I was going to play, put little stickers down, little ones for when I'd need to fly or when I'd need to drive, little stickers for if it was a Scotland event, an England event, and really planned every aspect. And I suppose maybe I was the one who caused COVID to happen, because straight away that plan got scrapped. There was no golf until at least the middle of June, let alone competitive golf. And while we were lucky to get some competitions at the end of last summer, 2020, it wasn't the greatest year for competitions. So I suppose this episode in particular is going to be an exercise in positivity, and we're not going to think about COVID for however long this takes. And we're going to assume that this year, and the schedule that I've created on this wonderful Excel sheet in front of me, it is possible. It's going to be possible. I understand. Yeah, we're going to get some free relief, I suppose. Just sit down and imagine what life could be like without COVID this year, and evaluate what the cost of that could be as I travel around and play some amateur golf tournaments. The current state of my game, I said earlier that when I started trying to play my full-time golf, I was a 4 handicap. Given all the handicap changes from the old Congu system to the new World Handicap system, my current handicap index is plus 2.8, and it's obviously nothing special in comparison to the real top amateurs, but it's a good enough handicap that should get me entry into most of these tournaments that I'm looking to talk about in this episode. So the way this episode is going to work is I'm going to first have a little discussion about my priority events this year, and by priority I mean events that I'm probably looking forward to the most, the events that they're first on my calendar, and how I'd build my year. I'd build my year around these events. And then in the second half of the podcast, I'm looking to evaluate the rest of the events, see how much they'd cost, and see if they're going to be worth my time to head on out and try and play them, see if I've got the money. To see if I've got the money to travel, spread my wings, and try and gain some experience playing the elite amateur circuits, despite not being an elite amateur myself. So without further hesitation, I think that's a good enough introduction for what we're going to do. Let's get into the priority events. Okay, so in an ideal world, my first priority event of the year would actually be here based in St Andrews. It would have to be the new golf club championships. They're highlighted here in gold on my Excel spreadsheet, but my home club is in Southend-on-Sea. It's called Garran Park, but I suppose my home away from home club is the new golf club. I'm on the committee there, and it's a very special event to me, I'd say. There's a massive honours board as you walk into the main bar of the new golf club, St Andrews, and it would be lovely to get your name up in gold, to be remembered in the history of that club for eternity, I suppose. What's great about the new club champs is there's 2 rounds of qualifying just to make the match play stages. Normally 18 holes on the new, 18 holes on the Eden, and then the last 16, the 16 best scores, they make it into the match play phase, which takes place on the old course across a week, last week of May. And that's a very special week. The St Andrews Club down the road have the same format for their club championships, and I think it's a winner. It tests your stroke play abilities as well as your match play, and I think it's a great format to determine a true club champion. So that's always number one on my list, and not just because it's free, not just because it's free to enter. Another priority event is the R&A Local Clubs Gold Medal, which is also free to enter. But the R&A Local Clubs Gold Medal takes place on the old course on pretty much the last Sunday of May is normally its position in the calendar. And it takes place on the old course, and it'd be the 60 best players in terms of handicap order of St Andrews. And of those 60, they get put out effectively in handicap order on a Sunday morning, and then the top 12 and ties make the afternoon 18 holes to determine who the champion of the links is for that year. Like I said, free to enter. But one of the special perks of the R&A Local Clubs Gold Medal is that the winner gets a spot in the St Andrews Links Trophy. And while I say that, I should give a shout out to the R&A British Amateur Championship and the St Andrews Links Trophy, who of course would be priority events on anyone's schedule, let alone my schedule. But I'm not good enough to enter those. If I just check my spreadsheet, the Amateur Championship, you got to have a handicap of at least plus 1.5, which doesn't sound unreasonable, but then it pretty much, if you're in the top 2,000 in the World Amateur Golf Rankings, the WAGA, that gives you a chance of a spot. But as you can imagine, it being one of the premier amateur events in world golf, not many of those top players are going to be passing it up the opportunity to play in it. Last year the field was 120 players, but normally it's 288, so you'd imagine it'd be the top 300 in the world are going to take their pick to play that event. And guess what? I'm not in the top 300 in the world, so I will not be going there. Whereas the St Andrews Links Trophy, like I say, there is a route to it through the R&A Gold Medal. But again, you need a high WAGA probably to enter that tournament. But yeah, so the St Andrews Links Trophy this year will be on the Jubilee and Old Course, 4th to 6th of June. and it's a qualifying round on the Jubilee and the Old Course before the top 40 in tyres get to play 36 holes on the Old Course to battle it out for the trophy. In 2019, the scoring was unreal when it was on the new and the old, and normally the Jubilee sorts the men from the boys, so that'd be interesting to see this year. As would, I should have said, with the Amateur Championship, that being at Nairn and Nairn Dunbar in the north of Scotland. That should be a great watch as well when they Sky do their highlights on Sky Sports, but that's a long way away yet. Another priority event I would have to say it's kind of a home event, it's just not as cheap as the others, is the Eden tournament. If I get to play in it this year, that would be the 4th time I've played in it. It costs £140 to enter, but rather than just a day or two of competition, you get a whole week's worth of golf and events, just to give you a taster of it. If you arrived on the Sunday, you'd get 2 practice rounds on the New and the Eden, where the qualifying then happens on the Monday and Tuesday, and the top 64 in the main event then play match play on the Eden, which could be 36 holes every day, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, until there's a champion. And at each stage, if you get knocked out, there's consolation events. There's an absolute worldie of a barbecue on the Tuesday evening, which is always worth attending, and you can probably get your £140 worth of food just at that one barbecue at the Eden Clubhouse. Unbelievable. The last one I played 2015, 2018, 2019, and 2019 was the Centenary Eden tournament, and they laid on, the St Andrews Links who organise it, they laid on so many great events like Hickory on the 9-hole Balgove Par 3 course, and so many interesting events around the town just to celebrate the centenary and the history of the tournament. And for £140 just for that week, and that's just the entry fee. I understand there'd be travel and accommodation for other people to play, but luckily I live in St Andrews, so that's not a consideration. Maybe that's why it's one of my favourite events on the schedule. But it's probably worth noting, just such a friendly family vibe, that anyone else looking to play the Eden tournament, the field's normally 240, 120 getting on handicap, so it's a ballot of the lowest handicaps who enter, but the first 120 who enter with time your entry online, the quickest 120 people get into the tournament. And for context, myself and my friends from Southend, we tried to enter this in 2015. I was the only one to make it based on handicap. We all entered within 6 minutes and the others didn't get in. So it really is a fastest finger first entry system. But if you can get in, it's a great event to play. And hopefully, fingers crossed, I get to play it this year, because I'd entered it for 2020 and it got cancelled. Quite rightly, you've got people travelling from across the world, and to all descend on the town of St Andrews would not be prudent in the current situation. So the 2020 entries got bumped up into 2021 as the Open was moved into 2022 in St Andrews. But that's one that I'd really look forward to and really hope that I get to play this year if we get the opportunity. Two other priority events that I should mention would be firstly the English Amateur, which this year is taking place at Moortown and Headingley at the end of July, and it's £85 entry, which actually isn't too bad if you play well and you get to have your practice rounds and work your way through the match play rounds. Last year it was 204 was the field size, and then 64 make match play, so I guess it's a similar format to the Eden tournament, where you qualify and then make your way through the match plays each day. So the further you get, the better value for money you get, I suppose. And with a handicap requirement of 0.4, I'd hope that I'd be able to enter that. Although last year I understand that as there wasn't much scope for travelling to tournaments further afield, the actual required handicap in the end to make it on into the field and not just a reserve list, I think it went to plus 1.5, something crazy. The year before I actually entered and I made it onto the reserve list, I think at the time I was 0.3 and I was something like 27th reserve, so highly subscribed event. I've never played in the English men's amateur, There was a debate whether, well, technically I could play the Scottish Amateur if I wanted to. I think it'd be slightly cheaper in cost, but you qualify for, well, either by being Scottish by birth or by residence, but you have to have lived in Scotland for at least 3 years outside being a student. So only just now have I actually qualified to be able to play the Scottish Amateur. But once you play either the Scottish or the English, you are never allowed to play the other one. And the way I've justified it in my head, even though the English Amateur is way more inconvenient to get to than the Scottish Amateur, which this year will be taking place at Mercer and Portlethen. I was practicing how to say that as well. Portlethen. I mean, that's the reason I'm not playing the Scottish Amateur. I'm not Scottish. And it just, if I won the thing, there would be uproar, wouldn't there? Especially speaking like this. So it has to be the English Amateur. And fingers crossed, if we can travel, that would be a great event to play and just soak up what the great players who will make it to the end of that tournament, soak up how they do things. And the final priority event on this year's schedule is one that I always get excited about when I see it on the page. Let me just scroll down to find it. It's the South East of England Links Championship, and I played this in 2019. It's just a class event. It's down in Kent, and it's played over Royal St Port's and Royal St George's, two courses I'd never played before playing this event. For £75, you can play your practice round on each course, plus a round on each before the cut is made at 40 players and tyres. And they alternate years, playing for different trophies. But so 1 year, if you make the cut, it'll be 36 holes the next day at St George's, and then the other year, the alternating year, it'll be 36 holes at Royal St Port, which I personally would love. I love Royal St Port. St George's is great, but St Port is so playable and so many birdie chances, and the greens were just pure. It's the end of August, this event. In 2019, I missed the cut by one, having double bogeyed the final hole at St George's, which was disgusting. Went for lunch and it's never... Well, you know what, it tasted pretty good, but you get my drift. It did not feel good to double the last and miss the cut by one. It was a long wait for the final players to come in. I missed it by one position. So I would love to go back there, especially for £75 to get a crack at playing that again. I played it with my friend Andy, and we stayed in a pub in Sandwich, which is, I mean, literally down the road. And that was quite a reasonable venture. The hardest thing about getting there is it's the Kent coast, and you got to go through London. And when you live in St Andrews, it's a big trek to make, but so worth it. And that's it. New Club Championship, the R&A Local Clubs Gold Medal, the Eden Tournament, the English Amateur, the South East of England Links. For 2021, fingers crossed, those are my priority events. And when we come back, I'm going to take a look at the other... It'd be rude to call them lesser events, but the other events which I'd love to play this year. Right, we're back, and we're looking at the rest of my schedule for 2021 in this hypothetical situation where COVID does not affect any of our lives, and we've just heard about the priority events, which I should have mentioned. There's 5 of them, 2 of them are free. The New Club Champ and the R&A Local Gold Medal, which are both based in St Andrews. The Eden Tournament, which is based in St Andrews, £140. South East of England Links, £75. English Amateur, £85. All adds up to a total of, off the top of my head, £300 for the priority events. But we're looking to play the best part of 30 events this year. Fingers crossed everything goes well. And it's going to cost more than £300 just in entry fees, let alone before travel and accommodation costs. But luckily we're not thinking about travel and accommodation costs right now. We're thinking about entry fees, and that makes me feel a lot better about my bank balance. We've got the rest of the year to think about pinching pennies. So we're going to talk about the rest, the best of the rest, which encompasses all of the rest. And we're going to start with the Scotland events, the national events in Scotland, mainly because in 2020 they were all cancelled, entirely cancelled by Scottish Golf. They took that decision early in the year. I had entered the first tournament on our list, Craig Miller Park Open, but that entry fee was refunded pretty much straight away when we went into lockdown on March the 23rd. So Craig Miller was the first tournament last year in my main plan, where it cost £45, and I was going to stay with some friends in Edinburgh and get some lifts. I wasn't driving at that time, so I was going to get some lifts to and from the course, stay with some friends in Edinburgh. It was going to work out to be quite a cheap event, having the practice round on the Friday, play the Saturday, fingers crossed make the cut, and then play the Sunday. It did not happen. I played there in 2019, I did not make the cut. It was a great experience. It was my first ever national event, and I had a lovely time missing the cut. But I played with some good guys, and I definitely would like to return at some point. Even though it gets a bit of a bad rap for not having greens in the best of condition, I didn't necessarily find that, but I guess I haven't been subjected to... When you come out of winter golf and it's April and you're just chomping at the bit to get some competitive golf in, I don't particularly care what state the course is in. I think it is a tournament that possibly could benefit from being later on in the year rather than in April. I think any course would suffer at that time of year. But it's traditional. Nick Faldo's won it, Mark Warren's won it. Great event, and I would like to return there. That would be the first on my list this year. That would be the kickstart. £45, as I say. It's pretty cheap. And one thing that, from structuring all these events from the different countries, the Scottish events do tend to be cheaper than the England golf events or the more notorious events on the England golf schedule. Not really passing judgment on that, it's just something that I've noticed. In fact, I'll go up to the top here. I've got 10 events planned for England and Scotland, and out of the 9 I've got information for with England at the moment, the tournaments are averaging just over £70 entry fee, whereas for the information I've got on Scottish events right now, the tournaments are averaging just over £60, so there's a difference. I'm not passing judgment. Maybe these England events are nicer. I haven't properly experienced them, to be fair. Hopefully this year that gets to change. That's what this is all about. So, Craig Miller Park is where it would start. Absolutely glorious. And soon after would be the Battle Trophy on the Craighead course at Crail. If you haven't been to Crail, my God, you've got to do it. 2 courses there, Balcomie and Craighead. And they held the Scottish Amateur there in 2019. Course record on Balcomie was getting destroyed by a matter of every hour. I think there was something like 3 different course records, maybe even 4, set that week. Some people came close to shooting 59 at Balcomie. Anyway, that says enough about a Balcomie. The Craighead is not a course you'll be shooting 59 on anytime soon. And by all accounts, from what I've heard, the Battle Trophy generally takes place in terrible weather conditions. Quite an exposed links course, Crail. Well, the Craighead course at Crail. I played it in 2019, had beautiful sunshine, got a tan. I think I even played in shorts, if I remember rightly. What a day that was. Don't think I got the proper battle experience, but for £50 I will gladly do that again. And that's a nice gentle start into your Scottish national events before getting to the end of May, where the Scottish Men's Open Championship has been moved to. Last year it was meant to be at Muirfield, which would have been an absolute treat. But COVID happened, so it wasn't at Muirfield. And now I think they had a lot of tourist bookings for this year, so I actually don't know where it's going to be this year. And it does clash with the new club championships, so they would take priority. But it's worth a shout out because the Scottish Men's Open Championship is some event. I caddied in it when it was at the Duke's golf course the Duke's is in St Andrews for people who don't know, but in 2019 I caddied in that, and it was a pretty stellar field, not as stellar as it has been because it was at the end of August, and it's now been moved to May so that it's more at the beginning of the real elite amateur season as opposed to the end where there's less to play for. But that's a tournament to look out for. Won't be playing it this year. And I don't even have a entry fee down for it, so we dance on. 2 events at the end of June on the National Scottish Golf calendar. The Tennant Cup at Glasgow Killamont and Glasgow Gales courses, hosted by the Glasgow Golf Club, and the Cameron Corbett Vase held at Hags Castle. I've never played Hags Castle. It's got a great name, and I'm sure the Cameron Corbett Vase is an excellent event. I really know very little about it, so that'd be a fun one to explore, especially in the height of June. But the Tennant's Cup I have heard about, and I've played the Killamont course before, never the Glasgow Gales. The only thing I know about the Glasgow Gales is that it hosted the final qualifying for the Open for quite a few years in succession. I think the first I heard about it was when Connor Syme qualified for the Open in 2017 at Royal Birkdale. He did it at Glasgow Gales and he won the qualifying as an amateur, which is sick. But I'd love to see that as a links course. The Killamont, I do have a story about the Killamont actually, where I played it in an inter-club match with the New Golf Club, representing the committee against Glasgow Golf Club. Lovely parkland course, but on the day it absolutely chucked it down with rain and the greens were flooded, but we were still putting on these greens in these matches, and you could tell how quick they were and how slopey they were, even though you were putting through what was essentially a mini swamp on the day. Lovely place, can't wait to go back there. £60 and you get, I assume, your practice rounds for free. Don't know that for sure. But to play the Killamont, the Gales, I need to hit up some friends in Glasgow if I was able to stay there. It'd be a bit of a drive from St Andrews, but that'd be a really fun one to play. And it looks like they've got some nice voucher prizes. Moving on, we have the Standard Life Gold Medal. On the Leven Links, which this year is hosting a Europro event for the first time. It was meant to last year, but now it's been moved forward. Standard Life Gold Medal hosted by the Leven Golfing Society. Now, I have heard about this because it is it's been won by Lee Westwood in the past, amongst other names. So it has a bit of pedigree. £40, and potentially with some good golf you could get 72 holes on Leven Links, which is an outrageous deal. And if you go into the clubhouse for the Leven Golfing Society, you see the honours board up there. That is a board that anyone would want their name on. Looking out over the links, name up in gold. Oh, that is the stuff of dreams. Northeast Open, up in truly in the Northeast, being hosted by Royal Aberdeen this year. Don't have an entry fee for that yet. Not much information out about that one, but Royal Aberdeen, the only time I've played Royal Aberdeen was in a match for the university, I think the second team at the University of St Andrews, and I've never wanted to be off a course more. It's meant to have the best front nine in the world, and I'm sure it was, but I couldn't see it through my own tears and the pouring rain. It was 40 mile an hour, gusting winds of maybe 50 to 60, could barely stand up, chucking it down, horizontal rain, and my match went up the 18th. I've never been so devastated that my match went up the 18th. Did win, fun fact. But it'd be nice to go and see it on a day that wasn't apocalyptic, and that is why it's on my calendar, I believe. Let me just check that. When is that? In August. So you would think that would be in immaculate condition for a course that hosted the RNA British Amateur Championship only a few years ago. There's also the North of Scotland Open, which is at Tain this year. Again, a course that I know very little about. Apologies for my ignorance, but I've heard great things. And that concludes all the Scotland events. That's quite a lot. And all those Scotland events tally up to, for the information I have, just under £400. So, quickly moving on to the England events, which I would like to play this year, although the first one on the list probably highlights the reason why I probably won't play all of these events this year, not just because of the cost, but because of the travel. First one in the third week of April is the West of England stroke play at Royal North Devon. So when you live in St Andrews, even though the event only costs £80 and you could get plenty of rounds in at Royal North Devon, it's a bit of a trek especially when the Battle Trophy is the same week. So that one is probably not going to happen. But if you're listening to this and thinking of making the trip down to Royal North Devon to play the West of England stroke play, I'm not going to stop you. I think £80 is a pretty reasonable deal for that. Handicap limit is meant to be 2 for entries, so that's quite reasonable. You'd get a stellar field, but it sounds like it is possible for lesser amateurs to get a game. Brabazon in May. Now again, this would require quite a bit of travelling just to get to the Northern qualifying. There's 3 qualifying stages to get into the event proper. Qualifying takes place 10th 11th of May. The event proper 19th to 23rd. And it's cool, if you've got to the end of that, it's £85 entry fee, 0.4 handicap limit for entering. But £85 you'd qualify, I imagine 2 rounds, 4 rounds if you can make the cut at the final event. And that is prestigious. The Northern qualifying this year is at the Oaks, which sadly I know nothing about, but there's only one way to change that. And the actual event itself, the Brabazon, the English Men's Open Stroke Play Championship, is at Ganton. And that would be the week before the New Club Championship, the absolute priority event of the year. So that would be a lot of travelling down south, then up north. Cool, I don't know if my car could take it. So, moving on, there actually then would be, for my schedule, it would be dominated by Scotland events at this point before we get to the end of July and kind of building around another priority event in the English Men's Amateur. There would be the Tillman Trophy at Knoll Park and the Walton Heath Trophy, guess it, at Walton Heath. Shock, horror. So, Knoll Park I know little about. Walton Heath has great pedigree. It's hosted the British Masters in recent times, the European Tour event. Lovely Heathland course. I haven't really played Heathland courses. You see all these pictures of people playing at Sunningdale and at another wonderful Heathland course. And it makes you jealous to an extent. I love links golf, I love Parkland golf, but to play Heathland golf would be a lovely new experience. And for £90 each, £90 the Tillman Trophy, £90 the Walton Heath Trophy, that's not unreasonable. With handicap limits of 1 to get in as well, I would be able to play those. And the reason they'd be worth playing, I suppose, would be it'd be preparation, a bit more inland golf before playing the English Men's Amateur at Moortown and Headingley. And the English Amateur is only £85. So the pre-events actually cost more than that, but I imagine, I don't know much about Knoll Park, but obviously Walton Heath with its pedigree, £90 is an absolute steal to get some practice rounds and some tournament rounds in tournament condition as well. That would be fun to play. So then moving on past the English Men's Amateur, there is the Lee Westwood Trophy. Is a possible event. It's on the same week as the Standard Life Gold Medal at Leven, so unlikely I'd play it, but it's a possible event, and it's held at Rotherham Golf Club, proper up to north, and £65 entry, handicap limit of 3.4, and a field of 141. That'd be quite fun to play, especially when the Standard Life Gold Medal would have a field of about 72. That would really immerse yourself with a lot of good golfers, a lot of good English golfers. And then the final events with the England Golf, under the England Golf banner, Waterford Trophy at Sundridge Park, where you'd need a 2 handicap to play, and the North of England Open Amateur at Seaton Carew, which definitely would be possible to play given that it's in the north of England and much less of a drive. £75 for that one. And that's it for the England events. I guess what's become clear from speaking out loud about them is that you will have increased travel and accommodation costs. It's a lot of driving, it's a lot of petrol, and the entry fees, as I've already mentioned, are slightly more expensive than the Scotland events, but some of the fields are bigger, and it'd be a great experience to be able to play courses other than links courses. The majority of the Scotland events are held on links courses, and with good reason because they're stellar courses. But in the England golf events, you get a lot of inland courses, and that would test your skills in other ways. And I think that'd be an invaluable experience. So I definitely won't play all of them because of the travel, but it'd be fun to play some of them and just pepper them about. Yeah, definitely not the Royal North Devon West of England stroke play. God, I'd love to play that, but it couldn't be further away from St Andrews if I tried. So those, I've got information for 9 out of the 10 England events mentioned, and total entry for that would cost £645 to play those. Just entry fees, not the travel and accommodation included. So already England and Scotland events would be... Oh, God, that hurts. It'd be over £1,000 just in entry fees. Right. So on a somewhat cheaper note, one other thing I wanted to include in the rest of my schedule is something that seems to be very traditional for Scottish golf, and that is gents opens, individual opens for gentlemen golfers, where clubs seem to open their doors for a day of competitive golf, generally 18 holes, some will do 36, for very cheap entry fees, and you get a day of golf on a lovely course with prizes available for all golfers of all abilities, not just low handicap players but high handicap players as well. And it's a chance for these courses who participate to show off their golf course. It seems to be more of a thing in Scotland than in England, and I'm currently on my schedule. I've got 6 gents opens that I've put down just for a bit of experience playing courses that are different to the links courses that I'm used to in St Andrews. They might be inland or just a different flavour, something that's more a different test for my skills, which I otherwise wouldn't get. They're dirt cheap, they're excellent value, and I'm just going to quickly run through which ones I've got down on my schedule. Early in May, 8th of May in fact, there's a Gents Open scheduled for Scots Craig Golf Club, which is in Fife. It's £25. Scots Craig, one of the oldest clubs in the world, absolute steal at £25, have a round of golf there. There's a Gents Open at Lenzie, £15. Lenzie on the outskirts of Glasgow. I've played there once in an inter-club match with the new club. £15 for a round of golf there. I've got some lovely friends who I could stay with there if it was possible, and that would keep things fairly cheap just to go with a £15 green fee, and that'd be a lovely day out. And then you move into July, and I actually have a big gap in tournaments that I could play. There is a Gents Open early in July at Peebles, just south of Edinburgh. £12 for a Gents Open at Peebles for a day out, round of golf on a notorious golf course for producing quality amateur golfers and professional golfers now. There's a couple coming out of Peebles. £12 for a round of golf there. Monifieth in August, £25 for a Gents Open there. And the Gents Open... the last one isn't there. There's another one in August hosted by Leven Thistle Golf Club, £20 for a round on Leven Links. And then I'm hoping there'll be food included in that at Leven Thistle. They're very good at hosting. But the final Gents Open, taking place in October, which I have on my schedule, is at Panmure. £40 to play that one, which sounds a bit steep compared to the other Gents Opens, but it is not. If you've ever been to Panmure, you'll understand what I'm saying. Great golf course, great condition. And that leads me to the final point I'd like to make about the schedule, really, is that there would be another event included in my priority events, and it would be the regional qualifying and final qualifying for the Open Championship. That is one of the 4 major championships in professional golf, the Open Championship. None of your US Open Championship rubbish. This is the Open. And I played in regional Open qualifying in 2019 at Panmure Golf Club. Now, last year the Open did not take place, so naturally there was no regional qualifying, or final qualifying for that matter. And this year, normally it takes place at the end of June, with final qualifying taking place early July before the Open taking place in July. It seems clear that the Open will take place this year at Royal St George's down in Kent. but whether there's going to be qualifying remains to be seen, whether that's going to be logistically possible. It is, or would be, the most expensive event of the season, £150. You get one practice round included in that, and you get one tournament round, 18 holes in the regional qualifying. And then that fee would cover your final qualifying should you make it through regional, where there would be another practice round and 36 holes of play. As an amateur, has to be the peak of your season if it goes ahead. It's the ultimate dream for any amateur to play in the Open Championship. I suppose the Masters as well, but the only way you can play in the Masters is by winning the Amateur Championship or another prestigious amateur title across the globe. With the Open, it's simple. Get through regional qualifying, get one of the final 3 places at a final qualifying venue, and you're there. Sounds very simple when you put it like that, but it's a shot at glory, and hopefully it goes ahead this year, because having missed out on it last year and had such a great time at 2019 qualifying at Pamir, I was 1 under through 8. I thought I was going to win the Open, and it was just fun, even though I then turned into the wind and rain and didn't quite make it through regional Open qualifying. It was just a fun experience to be part of, and it feels like you're living part of the dream for that one day a year only. So it would be lovely if that went ahead again this year. Interesting point about the regional Open qualifying is when I played it in 2019, handicap requirement was scratch or better, and obviously we've been through this handicap system adjustment going from Kongu in the UK to the world handicap system, and my experience has been that a lot of handicaps have reduced in lower handicap golfers. It would be interesting if the regional Open qualifying, the requirement remains scratch or better. I could see it going to +1 or better if it goes ahead. Just an interesting point. I don't think there's a right or wrong answer to it. It'll probably stay scratch or better. That's a pretty simple figure to reach, and we'll probably still have the same people playing it who played before, who want to lay out £150 at the chance of achieving their dreams. But just thought I'd bring that up as a little discussion point. Why not? Because it's the end of the podcast. We've been through my schedule. You've heard way too much about the events I may or may not play this year, if they go ahead or whether I can afford them. Coming to the end of trying to tally it all up with the R&A events, the Gents Opens, the Scottish Golf events, the England Golf events, just under £1,500 for the events I have information for. £1,500 just for entry fees. That's before we even talk about accommodation and travel costs, which is what I endeavour to do in future podcasts. Hopefully I'll be able to report from tournaments. I'll be able to give a bit of information about how that tournament's running and the amount of money it cost me to get there and get home. Yeah, I'd like to be able to get home from the tournaments as well. And hopefully by the time you listen to us, we'll be on social media at this point as well. I'm looking for Instagram and Twitter, nothing crazy, but it'll help you be able to keep up to date with any times that I post up a podcast, and hopefully it will have some information in it that you're interested in. If you love golf, this is the place to be. It's the Free Relief Golf Podcast. I've been Freddie, you've been lovely. See you next time.